All right, welcome to the Get Hoptimized podcast. I am Chris, your host, and today I'm pretty stoked. We are joined by Brian Deignan, who is the owner and operator of Validation Ale. They are a craft brewery up in Santa Barbara, California, neighboring state to us. We're in Nevada out here, but it's always awesome to talk to our California folks. I'm especially excited to talk to Brian because they're doing cool stuff. They've got beer, they've got food, they've got cocktails, they've got sick ass events, and they're making it work pretty well. And I can't wait to ask questions about it. Brian, welcome to the show, man. Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris. I'm excited.
Yeah, dude, this is going to be good. Let's start with a little background on you. So tell me about how you got into the industry and craft beer, maybe where validation came from, and we'll start there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of my story is probably pretty familiar with a lot of breweries out there. Home brewer for 16 years, got way into it, had taps on my deck, cold room in my basement, you know, much more than a hobby. And it decided kind of pretty early on in that journey that at some point I wanted to open a brewery, right? My second life would be opening a brewery. Probably a little bit unique is the other half of my story. I was in tech my whole life, really focused on startup tech companies with inside sales, and I built global sales teams. And so, for a very long time, I was managing really large groups of sales folks all around the world, and kind of honed my craft there. And that's really where the concept of validation was born. A lot of my job early on at these startups was called market validation. And it's this idea that you go out and kind of sell the software before you have it, or sell features before you have it to figure out what people actually want, not what you think they want. It's a very rigid process. It's very exciting. Um, and, kind of early on, I decided, all right, if I'm doing this very successful and it's helping these tech companies build what the people want, not what they think they want, why can't I apply this to beer? And so our tap room is full of beers that are categorized. And we have a validated beer and a challenger. We call it a vying beer. So we have two lights, two hoppies, two hazies, two darks, et cetera, et cetera. And we show live sales on our menu board. And if the vying beer outsells the validated, it takes over. The validated one gets kicked out. And we brew another beer to try and beat ourselves. So it kind of forces innovation, forces us to forces us to brew what our customers want, not necessarily what we want. And that categorization forces us to have a pretty diverse menu, not 15 IPAs, which if I brewed what I drank, that's probably what we'd have.
Yeah, that is one of the most fascinating things I learned about validation was this kind of leaderboard esque approach, and knowing a little bit more about your background now of market testing and using what the demand, letting the demand drive the offering really is super interesting. I want to unpack that more. So to make sure I have this right, you have vying beers, and as people drink them and order them, they basically move their way up the leaderboard. I'm going to keep calling it that, up the board,
Yeah.
to eventually being validated, and then they hold that spot, but they could be kicked out at any time based on what is up and coming. I have that. I'm understanding correctly.
That's exactly right. I think the piece to make clear is that they're only competing against the one other beer in their category, right?
Okay.
And so kind of early on, I had a leaderboard kind of designed a little bit more where you're describing, where it's kind of everybody against everybody. And I found out some really unique data pretty quick. Like if I have three light beers on, I actually sell less total light beers than if I have two. And so pretty quickly, I moved to this categorization where there's just two beers in each category. They only are facing off against each other. Otherwise we'd never have our golden mocha stout is one of our validated beers right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic beer, but if it was everybody against everybody, we'd never have that, right? That's never going to beat kind of the heavy hitters like the light beers and IPAs.
Yeah, that's actually a good upgrade to it too, because you're right. You're gonna have styles that are maybe not as you know popular, so to speak, as your IPAs and your big common ones that are out there. But it's cool you let them compete against others in that style. Do you like how many categories are on the menu? Uh,
We have seven categories.
Okay, so you got a pretty
And
wide breadth of options for folks.
yeah, and we have two seltzers as well.
Nice. You do the same thing with the seltzers. That's pretty fun.
Same thing with the seltzers. Yep. Yep. We
Right
actually
on.
brew the kind of alcohol sparkly water, or we create alcohol sparkly water. And then
Okay.
we just dose them one keg at a time with natural flavors and, figure out which ones stay on the top.
Nice. Do you see like seasonality to this? As the year goes on, there's different flavors that rise to the top, and do they come back, season to season, or what's your take on that?
Yeah. So yes and no. Like the interesting part is it's now we've done 100 and what was my thing? 136 beers in 3 years, unique styles of beer, unique
Wow.
recipes. So we're pretty prolific. But it's getting harder and harder to beat our validated beers. They're Now that we've gone through this cycle so many times, we've gotten a beer at the top that is very desirable. People love it. And so it's getting harder and harder. And so last year we set out to beat our Italian Pilsner, which was our longest validated beer. It had been on for 2.5 years or so. Um, and we eventually beat it. And we beat it, I think, partly because of what you're talking about with seasonality, in that every year in summer we'd launch a Mexi Lager and it'd be a vying beer and it would not beat the Italian Pilsner. But every year we kind of got better and better at it and tried to think about what was keeping the Italian Pilsner on top and not getting the Mexi Lager there. And so it adjusted every year. Well, last year we succeeded, and the Mexi Lager beat the Italian Pils. Um, and even though we've done this many times, there was still trepidation. Not so much with my head brewer because him and I are pretty tight on this, and we went through all the scary parts early on. But certainly for the bar staff, they're thinking, "Oh, I can't believe we're going to get rid of it. Everybody's going to be mad. They're going to be asking me about it." And I'm like, "Look, the data is showing that literally more people are buying the other beer. So the
Yeah.
opposite is actually true. If we stop
Yeah.
making the Mexi Lager, you'll have more complaints than this."
Well, it's
Uh,
interesting because I think that conversation you just alluded to of like, oh yeah, people are going to order it, and we know that because we're talking to these people all the time, is kind of a qualitative bit of data. If we're thinking about data science here, and this stuff is qualitative, but you're taking the quantitative data and saying, like, we literally have the metrics that say the demand is in this direction, and trusting that data to guide the menu in this case.
yep.
And obviously it's had some success with this. And you open this up to people to make recommendations for recipes or home brewers to say, this is a cool thing I might want to try or do, or here's my idea for this. And people can like make requests, right? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we set up our whole existence, all of our equipment in order to support this concept. So we were kind of all in before we even launched. And for the record, I'd never even worked in a restaurant or brewery before, so it was a pretty big step, pretty big leap. But I with my background in market validation, I knew it was gonna be fire. So like we have a small 5 barrel brew house and 5 barrel conicals or unitanks, and we use those to brew our vying beers. And then we have a 20 barrel with a 20 barrel fermenters and lager tank set up for the validated beers, right? And so we're not afraid of brewing something that's crazy or that a home brewer brought in. I mean, to be fair, we sometimes look at their recipes and tweak them a little bit, just because scale makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but we're not afraid to brew something like that because we know, depending on the style, it's probably going to be on 2 weeks to a month, and we have 15 other offerings for folks, and who knows, maybe it'll hit.
Well, it seems like
If not, that's
you've
fine.
thought about the operational side of this too and saying, well, we don't want to brew a huge batch of something that is untested at this point. But once it does hit the market test and passes that market test, then yeah, let's upgrade it to the big kettle, the big tank. And do you find that you guys are like rooting for sometimes in the back end and the team is like, oh man, that one might, I hope it does. And we're kind of rooting for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fun.
There's favorites of the staff, and they're trying to push the sales, which is pretty interesting. It kind of increases some bias there on the data, but um, ironically enough, all the ones they've been really trying to push have not beat our validated beers. And I think part of it is when you work at a brewery and you have a kind of diverse taste bud, you might be really interested in, like, we have a dark Belgian strong on right now. Fantastic beer. I mean, this thing it's wild good, but it's 10.2%, right? Like there's no way we're selling more of that than our Belgian blonde that's what, 6.8, right? They just, regardless, the general public is not going to buy more of that, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, but I mean,
so it's
it's
interesting.
also smart, right? And then when you do it in small batches, even if it doesn't go all as well, it's like, all right, we didn't, burn up a whole bunch of space and we have a bunch of liquid we need to move. But hell, man, if people want it and they're driving it, then maybe we will. Uh,
Yep.
with so many different styles that are rolling out in this constant fluctuation of the menu, what does that look like from like a promotional standpoint? I mean, are you guys just constantly posting and sending out messaging about what's here and what's on tap and all that stuff? Or is it more of a conceptual, like, hey, there's always going to be something new, come in and check it out and see what's on the menu today? How do you approach that end of it?
A little bit of both. We have our tech design, from tech, so I got very into the nerdy stuff. We have our tech designed in a way that when I put the new beer on the menu board, which is just a huge uh, digital monitor behind our bar, when I put it on there, it updates our website, and so you can go to our website at any time and see what's on tap. And that got a little more complicated when we added our second location last year, but we figured it out, and so you can see
Mhm.
both locations or individually. Um, and then, in terms of promotion, we have a reputation of always having new things, and so those folks that are, more adventurous and want new things, they know every week or so we're going to be launching a new beer. I would say we could do a better job promoting it. To be honest, we have so much going on that when we talk about social, it's like, man, where do you focus? Do you focus on the events that you're having to try and get people in? Do you focus on the beer? We haven't even touched on our distilling and cocktail program. Do
Mhm.
you talk about those? Do you release every beer that comes out? Which I wish we did. We just sometimes forget and things move too fast. And so,
Yeah.
we could certainly do a better job there.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm thinking about the mechanics of like how many posts you can really do throughout the week, how much ad space you can really buy, how much email space you might have, and with so many different options, there's a lot to talk about. And it's certainly a challenge. Kind of down this road, another question I had was like, did it take a while for people to figure this out, that that's what you're doing with this validation process? And how long did it take for people to catch on and go, okay, that's what this is? I understand the concept now and I understand what validation ale is.
Much, much faster than I expected. In fact,
Mm.
I can remember, and this still happens every day, but I can remember, man, we were open maybe a month, and I hear a group walk in, and the one person goes, there's four of them or so. And the one person had been in before, and she goes, all right, here's how this place works. Right. And she points to the menu and she's like, these guys are competing. Everyone we buy is this, if you drink this one, but you like that one better, you've had one of each. So you have a tied vote. You should get a third beer, like just they love it. They love being a part of it and engaged in it.
Yeah.
Um, fast forward to now, we're, I'm sure, like a lot of breweries where, it's raining today, it's cold, it's February. If I walk out there, we probably have four people in our tap room, right?
Mhm.
But last Saturday, we probably had 180 people in our tap room. Now, when we get that busy, do I think everybody that walks in, if it's their first time, is reading our board and,
Figuring it
getting
out.
the
Yeah.
description from our staff? Like, probably not.
Mhm.
Maybe we have a 50% hit rate at that point.
Yeah.
But generally, people know what our concept is. And I think the most fun part is that they're communicating it to their friends when they bring them in.
That's where my mind was going next. Is this would absolutely be a place I would recommend if this was my spot. I was in there. Oh, you got to go do this thing because this is how they do it. And it's really cool and unique and interesting. And so the word of mouth piece of it is has to be accentuated by this gamification concept, really, because it's
Yeah,
fun to talk about.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It's fun. It's different. And, we're in a small town. Santa Barbara is, a place most people know, but they probably don't realize that our population is 90,000. We're pretty small, and we have a lot of really good breweries here. And I was the most recent one to open. And so, we really had to stand out. And it's certainly working. I mean, obviously quality product is important as well. Um, not
I
just gaming.
I want to come back to the tap room in just a second, but I thought of something else while we were talking about the beer and the validation concept is distribution. Are you guys pushing beers out in cans and shelves and selling it in stores?
We are not. That
Okay.
was a pretty conscious decision really early on, not interested in getting into distro. I keep it to a dozen restaurants in town. And so there's a dozen restaurants where we're on tap. And if someone drops off, I'll take my next request and fill that. Um, and what's interesting is, you know, I would say 80% of the restaurants we're in, if a validated beer does get knocked off, they're like, yeah, cool, whatever. My customers won't care. There's 20% or so that are like, I don't really like this ride. I don't want to reprint my menus, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And they get over it really quick when they realize that the new beer we're bringing literally is because more people like it.
Yeah.
But
You're like, look, this
I
one's
don't,
going to do even better. Trust me, I have the data.
yeah,
Trust me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
I brought it
if
up because I was
we,
like, well, this has to be challenging if you're doing a bunch of can runs or something like that. It's going to constantly shift, and that world has changed so much. The distribution side, it's like, well, you used to be able to
yeah,
put out a lot of different SKUs, and grocery stores, craft beer zones, liquor stores would deal with that. Now it's like, well, we don't want that many SKUs. We want to keep it pretty consistent and standard and whatever.
yep.
And I imagine that would be really challenging with your model. But if that's not a factor, then it's not a factor, and you don't have to worry about that problem.
Yeah, yeah. We have a little baby canner and we can just for takeaway from our two locations. We only can our validated beers. We can them in 16 ounces. Every once in a while, we'll have a vying beer that was unique enough or hit hard enough that we will actually can that too, and we can it in a 12-ounce can. And so like we just kind of at every angle we're trying to kind of strengthen our concept, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Do
but
you get
yeah,
bonus
not
points
big
if you buy
canning.
you get bonus points towards the validation if you buy the to go version? It's equal points.
Mm. Yeah, I actually don't count those ones.
Ah, wow.
They're
Okay.
not, they're they're not in the API
Tap
because they're not
room
all equal, right?
specific. That's
Yeah.
fun. That's awesome. Okay, so coming back to the tap room now, there's more than just beer. You guys have some cocktail. You mentioned spirit stuff. Are you guys
Yeah.
distilling and creating that product, or is that like bought, or how's that
Yeah.
end of it work with the variety?
Yeah, good question. So, I guess I'll take a step back. Two things that I recommend for folks out there if they're looking to start a brewery or even if they're in one. One is I went and I interviewed 90 breweries before I opened, and I had very specific questions and asked them for quantitative data. One of them was around distribution, which led me down the road of not wanting to get into that world. Um, and that works for us. And then the second one was that folks who had food sold 2.5 beers to every head that walked in. And folks that didn't have food sold 0.86 beers for every head that walked in. Not everyone gets a beer. Most of these breweries are, tracking traffic and total sales. And so I just did all the math, put in a big spreadsheet. So day one, I decided I've got to have food. Now I've never even worked at a restaurant, and I'm now setting up a full commercial kitchen and hiring chefs and all of that. So in addition to our food, we are a restaurant. We have killer food. It looks great. It tastes great. We have really good ratings on Yelp for the food. Um, so that's kind of another arm of our business. And then on top of that, every year I kind of go through a process starting in October or so, where I just brainstorm every possible thing that I can think of that will increase our revenue next year outside of just organic growth, right? I call them growth drivers. So every year I sit down and I try and brainstorm them, and I spend 2 to 3 months just writing down everything I can, get the most wild ideas out there. I don't say no to anything. And then starting in January, and typically by the end of February, I go through that list with kind of as fresh eyes as I can. I try and pick the ones that are most feasible, either the required capital or the most time expense or least time expense for me, or most likelihood to get it done, et cetera. And of course, weighting how much revenue we think we can add to the business. And then as I get closer and closer to the top three or so, I really build out some financial models around it to decide which one I want to do. So that's a really long way of saying one of the years was distilling. I
Hmm.
looked at one of the options on my list wasn't actually distilling, it was get a liquor license. Well, when I did my little model on that, and in Santa Barbara, they're limited, so you have to buy them from somebody. The last one sold for close to $500,000. And I'm estimating, 22% revenue growth. Cool. I model it out. And I'm like, well, that's never gonna make sense. Like this is
That's a lot
really
of, you got to
expensive.
sell a lot of that stuff to get back $500,000. Yeah.
Tons, tons. And so I started to do a bunch of research. I love reading code requirements and the ABC rules and TTB and all that. And I found a really great loophole in California. If I'm a distiller and I have a bona fide eating location, which I did, I'm allowed to not only serve cocktails, but also buy all of the other liquor available and serve other people's liquor. And so
Oh.
then I went down a path of becoming a distillery. And so now we currently have we launched that last February, so just a year. And we do vodka, gin, white rum, dark rum, whiskey. The whiskey's fantastic. And agave blanco and agave repo, and we'll launch an Añejo this year as well. Um,
Hmm. So the
so that was
route
a huge
to
drive.
making it, it was easier to make it than to buy it
Hmm.
in that case.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and so in addition to that, obviously we wanted spirits, we wanted cocktails, but I didn't really want to become a cocktail bar
Hmm.
for a lot of reasons. Like hiring those folks is hard. They're highly skilled, pretty expensive, often a bit quirky. um, and our space wasn't really set up for it. I didn't plan that from the beginning. And so, all the kind of back bar stuff would be challenging and um, among other things. And so we went a different route, and we now have four signature cocktails on at any given point in time. I use not as public of a leaderboard, but I do use a lot of data to decide which ones we keep on and which ones we rotate out. And they're all in draft. So we did a lot of R&D to build these out in a way that they are very complex. In fact, more complex than you could make if you were sitting there making one at a time.
Hmm.
They're delicious, but we also had to do a lot of R&D to make sure they didn't separate, in the
Yeah. While they're
kegs.
sitting there, yeah.
And
Hmm.
so we now have four cocktails on. Outside of those four cocktails, anybody can order what we call a 1+1. So it's just one mixer and one spirit. We only have two levels of spirits. We have our standard and our premium. So kind of everything kind of follows that very uh, purposeful, narrow offering to make it easy for people to decide and honestly efficient for me. I didn't have to train or hire bartenders. My folks that know how to pour beer now know how to pour cocktail out of the same thing.
That's what I was thinking. It's like, well, you
Yeah,
don't have to have somebody be like, well, I want this kind of thing and I want this twist in it. Now I'm taking, 3, 5 minutes to make this cocktail and it's already busy. I can, and then like you said,
yep,
training of extra staff or whatever. And if it's a good cocktail, like it's a good cocktail, it tastes great and I've got multiple options. And do I need to have the, super custom and cocktail approach? You're saying I don't want to be that. I don't need to be that. I can make a really good product and keep it efficient for my operation. Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you put limitations on stuff. Yeah, I think there's a fear of saying, well, if I don't do it this way, people won't want it and demand will go down or buy purchasing will go down. But in fact, sometimes there's great case studies of where that's not the case. And having some limitations, saying this is what we do, we're going to do it really well. I think of like In and Out, right? It's like In and Out doesn't
yeah,
have a very complex menu, very successful burger chain, but like it's because they keep it simple and their operation runs and they benefit from all sorts of operational efficiencies. And I'm not going to say you guys are the In and Out of cocktails by any means, but you know, that seems like what's working for you is a combination of efficiency and a good product, and
yeah.
people like it. Apparently, that's great.
Yeah. 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 I mean, if you want to go to a place and watch somebody slap some mint, that's people know that's not us, right?
Yeah,
But if you want to go to a place with a group of folks and everybody in your group, will find something they like. Wine, we've got a bunch of local wines on tap as well. So we've got, local wine. We already talked about our breadth of beers. We've got cocktail options. We have some NA options that we launched this year, which I can tell you about. You want food, your whole crowd's going to be happy. right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to decide. And so I think we do get a lot of value out of that. We are something for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have a conversation as a group of six, right? You just
Yeah.
know where to go.
I think that's the concept too. You read these market reports that come out in these case studies of like, yeah, you got to have these options so that you appeal to more than just the craft beer guy um, that'll come in. The wives, the girlfriends, the other guys that don't want craft beer and have those options. But the challenge is doing it in a way that is operationally efficient so that you're not killing yourself to pull this off and because then it doesn't deliver good product anyways. Tell me about the
Yep.
NA beers. I'm curious your thoughts on that. You did this about a
Yeah.
year or so ago. What's been the evolution of the program there?
Yeah. So we actually just launched NA beer in January. So just, a month ago.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Um, I wouldn't call it our growth driver for the year. It's more of a uh, kind of reaction to some of the challenges that we're seeing, which I'm sure a lot of folks are seeing, which is just that the generation coming up into drinking age is not drinking as much as us. They're looking for experiences and other options. And, in my day, the experience was just drinking, but that's a whole other topic. And so as we came into January, which is traditionally our worst month of the year for many reasons that I think are probably similar across the globe, but particularly in Santa Barbara, we rely a lot on tourism, and there is nothing in January.
Mm.
No one's going anywhere. They just went everywhere for holidays. So we just die in January. And so this year we said, you know what, we're not gonna give in. Let's launch some new stuff. We've been doing a hop water that's pretty well received for a couple of years.
Nice.
In January, we launched flavored hop waters. We now have three of them. We have our standard. We have a guava and a grapefruit, and the guava and grapefruit are going to battle each other, just like our concept for everything else. So we'll come out with some new flavors. We launched an NA beer. So we launched an NA amber. We have some so I didn't mention this either in terms of other offerings, but our cold room has a door that the public can walk into, and inside there's racks of other alcohol or NA options that they can buy and drink on site. Things like June Shine or Booch Craft, things that we're not going to get into.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of NA beers in there that are really popular. There's a light and an IPA and a hazy. Uh, and so we didn't feel like we needed to compete with that. So we launched an amber NA beer. It's been well received. You know, not a great, huge seller for us because most folks are coming in to drink something with alcohol in it. But I think that part of our business will grow. But then we launched another new product that is quite unique. We just kind of sat around and in that kind of vein of brainstorming, trying to come up with crazy ideas. We were thinking about the groups of folks that come to validation less, or they come here and only eat food, right? And food's not a great high margin product. It's there to keep people in seats and drink. So if they're coming in and just eating the food and not drinking, there's an argument there that it's hurting us.
I won't say no,
Uh,
but man, I would love it if you bought a couple beers while you're here or something.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so we started to think about that group that is a little bit more health conscious. Maybe they're not a hard no on drinking. They want to be involved in the party, but they're not throwing back the bigger beers. So we launched a electrolyte heavy fizz. So it's a sparkling water with a ton of electrolytes in it and 2.5% alcohol. And so we use our clean ethanol that we have for our vodka. We dose it just to 2.5%, and you have a kind of sparkling flavored water, like imagine a LaCroix, but
Hmm.
with a ton of electrolytes in it. So like an adult Pedialyte almost.
Yeah.
But it's got just a little bit of alcohol, so you can still kind of take the edge off.
You're still part of the cool kid stable here. You got something in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Relax a little bit. It's still okay. You can go run your mile later.
Yes. I love the electrolyte infusion on there. It's something, sometimes we'll be sitting around drinking or whatever. It's like, oh man, it'd be cool if there was more of these kind of uh nootropic isn't the right word. It's more, and it's not quite health drink is not the right word either. It's more of these kind of like, complex drinks that it's like, yeah, maybe a little bit of alcohol would be good, maybe not. It's like, for me, I'm like, I don't necessarily want something that's like just totally NA with no cool stuff in it. I want to have something in there, but electrolytes, cool. That's great. It's helpful for my body. And I'm having like something that's a little bit more than just water or a Pepsi or whatever. And here you go. You've got it at validation.
Yeah. I think I would say it's not validated yet. Right now, it's an idea.
It's vying. It's vying.
It's fine. It's fine. I think part of the challenge I'm having is how to market it, to be honest.
Mm.
Is it a hair of the dog? I mean, I've used it in that way, and it's pretty helpful. You get hydrated really quick. You get a little bit of alcohol,
A little bit of painkiller in
Uh,
there from the day
yeah,
before.
a
Yeah.
little bit of painkiller there. Is it the in between each beer drink so that
The
you
pacer.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, you can lengthen your party but not lose the buzz, that kind of thing? Or is it kind of a standalone drink and folks are going to come in and drink three or four of those because that's what they like? So I am struggling with the positioning a bit, but
Mm.
it's new. The drink's delicious and I think it has merit. So we'll see where it goes.
That'll come with time, and I can tell you listen to your customers and the data there, and it's like, well, who's drinking this and why are they drinking it, and that'll help us decide how we're going to market this thing and what it's really going to be called and who it's for. Um, but really, really interesting concept. Another thing I want to talk to you about is, about getting people into the tap room to drink these
Yep.
lovely beers and to eat this amazing food. And now breweries, it used to be that you could just make beer and great, happy days. But now breweries everywhere say the same things. I'm an event company. I got to have programming. I do these things. And y'all have had some fun stuff. I mean, you guys have Maroon 5 at one of
We
your
did.
locations. Events are probably part of the fold here. Curious your thoughts on like programming at the tap room and where you've seen success there.
Yeah, it's a huge hassle and it's a requirement, right? And I think what I try and tell my relay to my team here is that I say yes to everything. And sometimes that might mean that there's a little bit of lack of organization or communication or some last minute things that have to change or whatever. But my goal is to get the most people in here so that they can earn the most tips. And what that means is I'm going to say yes to everything. And, that means I have a pretty big workload and I've had to find ways to really make it efficient. We do quite a few private events here. We lean towards a semi-private event, which is where we just rope off half of our space because then we look busy and it brings business in and locals don't get mad that we're closed.
Mm-hmm.
But we also do full buyouts as well. So I have a whole system for forms on my website that auto email templates out and make sure that I'm as efficient as I can for
Mm-hmm.
those requests. Um, we do have standard programming, and it's changed over time. There was a point we had, what did we have? We had bingo on Mondays, we had karaoke on Tuesdays, we had trivia on Wednesdays, and we had live music on Thursdays. And those all had their kind of success, and then many of them started to wean off, and that means I eventually cancel it because it's not making sense or it's too much energy or cost or whatever, uh, and then I've got to go find a replacement for it and fill that hole. And so, today we have live music every Thursday during the summer because we're busy on Friday anyway, and during the winter it moves to every Friday because we're not busy on Fridays in the winter. Then we can get more people out. So the live music thing has always been a core part of our programming, but again, had to build a ton of efficiencies around replying to bands. I get 3 or 4 band requests a day, so I have to reply to them, tell them how we compensate. I then have to pay them after they come. There's a lot of logistics that I had to think about making
Mm-hmm.
simple. Um, we do have trivia every Wednesday at both locations as well. That one just seems to work. Some nights better than others, but that one seems to work. Um, and yeah, then like I said, the private events, and every once in a while, one time, Adam Levine and his group shows up, and that's a big, huge fun party too.
I mean, sometimes luck hits your table there and big win, and it's a big marketing opportunity, and now everybody wants to go to the same spot you went to. Super rad, and I'm happy to hear you say that you're willing to shift those dates, especially in offer more off season. I wish more breweries did that, as saying, look, we're not going to hold on to this concept of like we're not going to do anything on Fridays because that's our day, but and are afraid to move some event programming onto those days, especially during the slower months. It's like, why not? You got to make those days work better for you and stronger for you to make the whole entire month work in the slower times. And be open to that. And
Yeah.
I think more breweries would see success with it. And it sounds like you've reacted to that too and said, well, in the winter we'll move it to Fridays and make Fridays work better. And that works better for us overall.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm the yes guy. I mean, I really do say yes to everything, and then I figure it out, right? We have so this week is Burger Week in Santa Barbara, and it's a big deal here. We'll have a line out the door. We'll sell 1,700 burgers, through the end of the weekend. So it's
Dang.
it's wild. And I had a 30-person reservation call yesterday for a reservation today. And logic would say we're going to be slammed. There's going to be nowhere to seat. Why would I put reserve signs out on the table? But listen, I say yes. If 30 people want to come in, I say yes. I'm going to put some
Yeah.
reserve tables out, and you know, hopefully all the people in line still get their burgers, and those 30 people show, and we just say yes to everything. And it'll be nuts. We'll be a little understaffed for 10 minutes, and we'll deal with it. It'll be fine.
There's something to be said about the busy spot. And if somebody sees that a place is busy, it's like, all right, I'm willing to wait for this burger. It's probably dope. Or this beer is
Yep.
sick or whatever. You go to the line that has the people in it. And
Mhm.
that's an important factor. Um, yeah, man. I mean, there's so much that good that y'all are doing, and it's clearly working, and you guys are having fun doing it. Love the validation concept. Love that you've expanded product portfolio in a reactionary to customer desires and demand. Curious to ask you what you think the challenges are in the future here for you, maybe the industry, maybe pull out the crystal ball here a little bit and say, all right, 2026 is just getting started here. What do we see as, big challenges coming up? And follow-up question to that is what's your plan of attack for that? How you overcome those challenges, or how do you plan to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think it's a really weird time for us. We have three breweries in town here that, are either in the process of selling or trying to sell, or have given up on selling and shuttered. And they're all great. And I think it's just a sign that we're certainly in a tough time right now. I think macroeconomics have a big part to play. I mean, we all know consumer spending is down. That, is just a fact. And that makes it tough when I think relative to 3 or 4 years ago, ingredient costs are up 30%, labor costs are up 30%.
Mm,
In Santa Barbara, we're in a place where our rent is 35% of our overall revenue, right? And it's very expensive
yeah.
to have a business here. So we're all kind of operating on a knife edge. Um, and I think then the very real challenge is the new generation of folks that are coming into the market who are not drinking, or they are definitely drinking a lot less.
Mm,
And yeah, so it's I think there's a ton of challenges out there. I think the distribution market, we talked a little bit about that. When I look at it here, I still see a fair amount of breweries out there that are, they have 1,000 investors. They have a runway of 3 or 4 years. They're trying to get the biggest footprint they can to get acquired. I am not seeing as many of those acquisitions right now. And,
mm,
the world where AB and Bevco just bought anybody that looked a little bit good, is at least it feels like it's slowing down. And so, do you take that risk, or do you compete with that low price point that the folks are trying to get out there and get the biggest footprint done? So I don't know, it's a hard time. I think our strategy has and will continue to be, like you mentioned, adapting with our customers, innovating, and I think most importantly, trying to be something for everybody, right? And that is really hard to do. I wish that we could just be the greatest beer place. Um, but the market's not big enough when people are going out less and spending less. They're really making a conscious decision about where they're going to go. And if I can't capture every one of those people that's deciding to go out, I'm going to have a really tough time. Right.
mhm.
And so that's kind of our strategy and focus, is to capture it all. Uh, and I think, do that in part just by our diverse offering and listening to our customers and all those things we've talked about, but also just to focus on really, really high quality. Um, we have three products here, is what we say. We have our food, we have our beverages, and we have our customer service. And if you're to go on Yelp right now and look at it, we're the highest rated restaurant or brewery in Santa Barbara. And that doesn't happen on accident. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of really important hiring decisions. It
Yeah.
takes a really great team, which we have. And we really lean into that because again, when people are deciding to go, they're not going out 5 times a week anymore, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think we're much more likely to capture those folks when they're thinking about the experience they have.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think people are more choosy with their dollar. People's wallets are tighter. And it's not that, I always say that it's not that they don't have money to spend, but they don't have as much of it to experiment and or pay for things that aren't going to deliver an experience that they're going to be like, yeah, that was worth going out and spending the money I need to spend to have a meal and drinks and, that kind of thing. I can't do it multiple times a week. I maybe do it once, maybe twice, or a few times a month or whatever. So I'm going to be choosy about where I spend that. And I want to get bang for my buck. Um, and being able to deliver a good product, good service, and have some diversity in that product is that. I mean, even with myself, me and my wife, we go out and it's like, well, we don't want to do the same thing this time. I want to have some different flavors. I want to eat something other than the standard thing I always eat or the other beer I have, standard beer I have. So finding a place that offers all those things is tough. Especially when you look at craft breweries and that kind of stuff around. So well, I want to have some diversity there, but to your point too, it's difficult to deliver and riding that
Yeah,
razor's edge is where you're at. And I think y'all are doing pretty good. So that's
yeah.
fantastic, man.
Thank you. Yeah,
For
it's fun.
sure. So for the folks that, are like, man, validation's sick, or I want to work with you, I want to learn from you, I want to get in touch with this dude here. What's your message for them? Is there stuff you have coming up? Give us the rundown and how folks can connect with you.
Yeah, so in terms of connecting, this is one thing that a lot of people don't tell you about running a small business. Literally, it all comes to me. So hit me up on Instagram, fill out a form on the website, call the phone number, leave a voicemail. Literally everything is going to come to me, and I'm happy to chat with anyone. I love this stuff. I fell in love. I was the guy in high school and college that was, I shouldn't say high school. I was the guy in college that was not drinking beer, that was, drinking whiskey because I didn't like beer. And so I found beer a little later in my adulthood and just fell in love with the product, the rich history, I think all of the valuable things that it does do for society. So any way I can help anyone else, expand that, I'm all for it. I love it. So contact me if you'd like. In terms of, you know, what's coming up with validation, I think it's a lot of the same. I still haven't decided on what my growth driver is going to be this year. So there will be something. I have like top two or three. So, watch our Instagram. You'll probably see something come out and think, oh wow, that's a complete new thing for validation. Um, I'm not totally sure what that one's going to be yet, but yeah, more more of the same, which for us is not staying complacent, not being the same. Maybe we'll get Maroon 5 again. We'll see. They were a fantastic team to work with.
Inconsistency is the consistent, or the consistently changing, maybe is a better way to put that,
Right.
which is fantastic. We will put links to your website, to the social channels and stuff in the show notes. So if you're watching this, listening to it, go open up that little expand bottom area. You'll see the links there and connect with Brian and Validation. If you're in Santa Barbara, go check it out. I know the next time up in that area, I will for sure be checking it out. Brian, it has been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us and getting to know us and me and everything. It's been awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
Cool. We'll talk soon.